It's no mystery, Chase Elliott's fan base is a salad bowl consisting of some of the old Dale Jr. and Jeff Gordon fans. It is something that has helped him become NASCAR's most popular driver 5 years in a row. But with every true hero, there are the haters who don't see him as such. They see him as an imposter, and they believe that because of his massive popularity that he is indeed favored by the system. Leave it to rabid Chase Elliott fans to turn a blind eye to blatant NASCAR favoritism. Mickey Elliott gets away with one once again. There was a group of cars racing and you choose to show Chase Elliott racing for the lead. This is called favoritism. So the critic consensus amongst seemingly most NASCAR fans on Twitter is this: NASCAR actively goes out of their own way, defies logic and rules to guarantee that golden boy Chase Elliott and his fans' feelings do not get hurt. It's finally time to answer this question once and for all with this brand new video from NRF Productions. Does NASCAR show favoritism towards Chase Elliott? The entire complexion of the 2019 Daytona 500 changed when a routine green flag pit stop sequence went horribly wrong. I wonder, who is that idiot? Who is that guy in the 52? A call that seemed to be one worth millions for both Drew Blickensderfer and Brian Patty, as these two ordered their drivers to stop for service while they were already on pit road, in the process playing chess to try to beat the dominant Toyotas who would pit under the caution sequence and give up their precious track position. Now with 34 laps to go in the biggest race of the year, Michael McDowell and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. were the pawns with a lot of power. Well, that was before NASCAR would decide, with lights out on the pace car might I add, that they were not the leaders of the race. So what does any of this have to do with Chase Elliott? Set to resume the race 6th on the inside lane after the 9 pit crew picked up a spot by beating Eric Almirola off of pit road. Because Michael McDowell had already chosen his lane for the restart, this created a weird situation where the outside lane would move up 2 lanes on the restart. That meant that the lightning fast pit stop by the 9 team didn't matter because Eric Almirola was now a row ahead of him. As Ricky Stenhouse Jr. ducked out of the lead spot right before the restart, Chase Elliott fought to reclaim those lost spots, attempting to pass Eric Almirola as the lines formed up for the restart, and this would end up leading to an awkward 3-wide restart. Chase Elliott all alone on the top against the pack at Daytona is like Amir Garrett when he tried to take on the entire Pirates team a few years ago. Appreciate the effort, appreciate the willingness to do it, but you just knew things were not going to end well. Now in previous situations, something like this would warrant a penalty for someone who is not in their correct position, but NASCAR would deem that the restart was fair and there would be no penalty. Although, if we're being real in this situation, if we're being completely real, Chase Elliott was the one that got penalized. Just 5 laps after picking up a spot on pit road, gaining some ground on Eric Almirola, he was now well outside the top 20 for an error he, Alan Gustafson, and his entire team had nothing to do with. Now, I could completely understand this situation happening if this was a move where the leader lost power or tried to coast around the track saving fuel. If in that case they were coming to the green, it would cause a lot of confusion. It would just naturally seem like the fitting thing, an acceptable thing for everyone just to move up a row. However, this right here was NASCAR completely shuffling the running order less than a lap before green. This was some utter incompetence by race control, which was still hell-bent on going green, probably because they wanted to help Fox get a ratings curve for animation domination, which, guess what, in the long run didn't work because this race would have a bazillion cautions to make this race go well over its runtime. While not directly, on that February late afternoon, NASCAR penalized Chase Elliott for doing nothing wrong. Chase Elliott was hoping history would not repeat itself with a 4th elimination in the round of 8. Chase Elliott was hoping to evade that, and thus this opening race at the Kansas Speedway was critical to earning the points necessary to keep up with Logano, Hamlin, and Keselowski to get into the Final 4. A Stage 1 victory was not only an impressive statement to the competition, but also to the chemistry of the 9 team. Their communication that day was old school due to radio issues, as Chase Elliott could not hear crew chief Alan Gustafson and spotter Eddie DeHaan. Now, when it comes to communication issues in NASCAR, it is common to have connection problems, but in many cases, the driver and team, they can still communicate well, even with some of these bugs. Chase Elliott in this situation, however, didn't even know when to pit, and the team didn't even know the precise adjustments that needed to be made to the car, relying on hand signals from Chase that indicated whether the car was loose or tight. And this is something that actually went against the NASCAR rulebook, as it is mandatory for the driver to hear the crew chief and spotter and vice versa, mainly because this is a safety thing. You know, the spotter's job is obviously to direct the driver to make sure that he is clear. Not being able to hear the spotter is not only a danger to Chase Elliott and his life and safety, but also his competitors. When NASCAR was questioned about this, they claimed that they did not know that this happened the entire race. There was a dialogue back and forth between he and the crew chiefs that led us to believe they were okay, and it turns out from his interview afterwards they weren't, suggesting that Chase Elliott and the 9 team indeed got off the hook for a blatant violation of NASCAR's law of the land.
Alan Gustafson said no more than 9 times, stay out, stay out, stay out. Chase Elliott couldn't hear him. He came down pit road anyway.
The 2020 Xfinity 500 2 weeks later would be a career-defining race for Chase Elliott. On the cusps of elimination, yet again, he would lead a career-high laps on that chilly November afternoon in Martinsville. That wasn't the only thing that was cold on that afternoon. With less than 150 to go, the 9 team had an extraordinary slow pit stop to lose the lead, which according to the NBC Pit Road Bug was a 0-tire pit stop. Chase Elliott has the worst pit crew in NASCAR confirmed. The reason for such a catastrophic stop was originally a NASCAR rulebook violation by jackman Tyler Semke. The rulebook states that you cannot go over the wall until the car is 1 stall away. Chase Elliott, as a result, was originally handed an over-the-wall too soon penalty to get sent to the back of the pack, all but eliminating his postseason chances, ending once again. Chase Elliott would end the round of 8 once again, missing his chance to make it to the championship. However, before we get ahead of ourselves, before we get to this narrative, Alan Gustafson would challenge on the basis that the jackman decided to reset himself by running back to the wall and tagging up before beginning his work on the number 9 car. Now, the rule had been waived off for instances like someone losing their balance on the wall. In that situation, NASCAR would completely forgive that instance. But when it comes to something like this, a crew member jumping over the wall too soon and then resetting himself, this was completely foreign territory for NASCAR. Now, ultimately, when you look at this pit stop, you have to think of one thing. Was there an advantage gained by Tyler Semke going over the wall too soon, even with the reset? You could argue that yeah, maybe the entire team got a head jump, but it's awfully hard to gain an advantage on pit road in terms of the stopwatch, as Chase Elliott is in his box, ready for service, ready for the team to service his car, yet the jackman, he's not jacking up the car, he's back resetting himself. Tyler Semke having to go back to the wall to reset himself ruined the entire choreography of the pit stop. Therefore, there was no advantage gained from the jackman jumping over the wall too soon. Chase Elliott was rightfully waived of his penalty and went on to win back-to-back races, etching his name into the history books as NASCAR Cup Series champion. All thanks to a split-second 1000 IQ move by Tyler Semke, the unsung hero of the 2020 championship team. Fans from Charlotte, North Carolina to Los Angeles, California were summoned to the Daytona International Speedway for the return of the race fan, now that COVID restrictions were easing up a bit. They were also here to witness the kickoff to Chase Elliott's cross-country tour as the defending NASCAR Cup Series champion. A season-opening victory in the 500 wasn't just about inscribing his name in the Harley J. Earl Trophy alongside his dad. Such a win would make him just the 17th driver in the modern era to win 3 consecutive victories. Chase Elliott evaded the great balls of fire created by the Team Penske duo of Brad Keselowski and Joey Logano on the chaotic last lap to get alongside Michael McDowell for the win for all the marbles. But with NASCAR, a motorsport that is historically known for making decisions on a whim, would put it out to end the race under yellow. No longer were the results dictated by the dash to the checkered flag, but instead who was out front at the last scoring loop before the caution. Michael McDowell was easily given the victory and declared champion of the 63rd annual Daytona 500. Chase Elliott, on the other hand, began his championship defense 1 spot shy of NASCAR history. So yeah, the Vegas odds are hard to predict, especially for a super speedway style event like the Daytona 500. But for round 2 at the road course configuration, Chase Elliott had at least a 1.5 to 1 chance to win this entire race, which he lived up to that number by dominating the entire event. Though a storm was brewing, a routine Florida sprinkle, which was an effective rain but not one that would soak the entire track. Now, in a situation where the track got completely wet, NASCAR would, per the rulebook, throw out the caution and allow the teams to change into rain tires. However, the right call was to stay green and let Chase Elliott continue his schooling of the field. I say this because it is common knowledge in the NASCAR garage that a car with slick tires on a half-wet track is a much better alternative than driving a car with rain tires on a half-dry track. There was no need to throw the caution. So guess what NASCAR decided to do? As none of the teams changed into rain tires on the ensuing pit stop, the race became a crapshoot for strategy. Chase Elliott no longer had the track position. Back there in the calm of the storm, where he would be shoved off course, spun out, and officially taken out of contention with a disappointing finish of 21st. In 9 out of 10 simulations, I guarantee Chase Elliott wins at least one of these races. However, this is reality, and in reality, Chase Elliott left Daytona Speed Weeks 2021 trophyless. Kevin Harvick's mission in the 2021 postseason was to teach Chase Elliott a lesson similar to how he would teach his 9-year-old son Keelan, giving the 9 a shot into the wall that almost prompted Alan Gustafson to wave the white flag, call it a day, and a playoff run. Instead, the Uno reverse card would come to make Kevin Harvick look like a total Karen. So we all know the outcome, but we have to rewind the clip here to go back to the event right here. Chase Elliott successfully cleared the DVP clock, but he was losing a second a lap to the leaders. With 31 laps to go, Chase Elliott's pit crew struggled to service the car due to the damage, already losing precious seconds on the pit stop, and because of that, the team didn't bother to fix the back bumper that was starting to fall off. It would hit the ground under the next run as the mangled Napa Camaro passed Denny Hamlin to get his lap back. Now, this wasn't the first controversy with the back bumper coming off, as NASCAR allowed Kyle Busch to race without a bumper cover in the 2018 Bristol night race. Per the NASCAR rulebook, the bumper cover is only mandatory at the super speedways and the intermediate tracks where it is done as a safety thing for these drivers. At the short tracks and road courses, all bets are off. NASCAR had no say in whether these teams could have a bumper cover or not, but what NASCAR could do in this instance was throw out the black flag to the number 9 and all but eliminate them from advancing to the round of 8. The ball was in their court, there was no rule being evaded, and so NASCAR made the decision to not make a decision. Chase Elliott's bumper cover would eventually fly off, which prompted a full course caution, one that would change the entire complexion of the race. Teammate William Byron, he lost his massive lead and was later overtaken, eliminating his chances to advance, whereas Chase Elliott rallied to survive the chaos. In this situation, this was a call similar to the Daytona road course, but at least in this case, this was a necessary call. The debris on the racetrack from the 9 car could have easily ruined even more drivers' races had NASCAR decided to remain green, and thus it would have created a lot more controversy with a motorsport league that has a history of having controversies, stupid controversies like this. Chase Elliott pretty much worked 2 shifts in his second career race at the Nashville Superspeedway that produced 2 different results. The day shift, he was a 5th to 10th place car, but after a lengthy rain delay and the lights when they came on, one can only imagine what adjustments were made to that car. Chase Elliott would usurp the JGR Big 3 to grab the lead, but as it seems like every single time Chase Elliott, he is on point, he is cruising late in these races, there would be a caution for the 77 blowing up, probably due to crappy parts. Alan Gustafson would shed some past demons like the 2020 Coca-Cola 600 with the call to keep the track position and all the goodies to having cleaner air. Kurt Busch and Ryan Blaney, meanwhile, were not on the level of Chase Elliott performance-wise, and thus the number 9 was cruising to win number 2 of the season. But back in the Hornet's Nest, there was a swarm of cars. They were all close together, leaving Cole Custer and Brad Keselowski to collide with each other as both of them would make some hard contact with the outside wall. From this swarm of cars, there would be a swarm of controversy. NASCAR chose to stay green as Brad Keselowski's car had a flat tire but was able to limp around the track, placing little debris on the racing surface itself, and remaining well out of harm's way. Still, fans across the country were outraged after this race, and no, it wasn't because the USA Network immediately cut to Law & Order reruns right after the race. Many felt that there was a caution warranted and that the reason why NASCAR stayed green was to help their golden boy Chase Elliott win the race. Though when you look at the circumstances, when you really analyze them, there was really no need for a caution. William Byron and Tyler Reddick, they had flat tires around the same lap at Kansas, but there was no need for a yellow because there was no shredded tire or there were any panels on the racetrack that could have posed a threat to the driver's safety. I also think past actions caused NASCAR not to be so trigger happy in this instance. Keep in mind, this was a month removed from NASCAR's All-Star fiasco. Race Control tried to manufacture a routine contact with the wall from Ricky Stenhouse Jr. into what I would expect something along the likes of the 1992 Winston to get fans talking for decades around the water cooler. Well, guess what? NASCAR in that instance got a memorable race that will be talked about in the same sentence as the 2015 Geico 500, so I guess in that situation they will be talked about, just not in a good way, the way they wanted. So in hindsight, it was best for NASCAR not to reintroduce its fans to these symptoms being just weeks removed from such a traumatic experience. Honestly, the only thing that should have warranted a caution was when Brad Keselowski was thumping along the backstretch grass like he was Mater driving on the new road. Maybe a caution was warranted in that situation, but it would have had no impact on the finish. Chase Elliott crossed the white flag, which meant a happy ending amongst NASCAR fans where Brad Keselowski gets tended to, and Chase Elliott wins the Music City Marathon. So does NASCAR favor Chase Elliott? I think with this video it answered the question pretty well, and it is no with an exclamation mark. I think every driver has had situations where they were favored by certain decisions and situations where they were screwed over by NASCAR. Chase Elliott has had his fair share of robberies throughout his career based on what we looked over. Honestly, the only reason why I'm here today talking about Chase Elliott favoritism is because he just so happens to be the most popular driver, which gives NASCAR fans a false sense that Chase Elliott, he has the fan base, he has the numbers comparable to Dale Jr. Yeah, sure, he does have a lot of the Dale Sr. and Dale Jr. fans, and he does have a lot of the Jeff Gordon fans that saw him win races and championships back in NASCAR's heyday. However, I think NASCAR fans have a misconception about the size of Chase Elliott's fan base. They liken it to the fact of Junior Nation. You know, he has that level of fan base, when in reality, NASCAR is not the motorsport it once was. Because of that, you have this false perception where people think there are so many toxic Chase Elliott fans, and honestly, for every toxic Chase Elliott fan I've seen on Twitter, there's at least 5 toxic haters, rehashing the Chase Elliott would never do that narrative to thousands of likes and all the clout, because obviously this is a topic that gets talked about like crazy because people believe that Chase Elliott has a fan base on the level of Junior Nation, when that's just a straight up lie. Maybe it's finally time for those toxic haters to actually get a hobby or focus on other things, like the disturbing record of Chase Elliott fans being attracted to minors. So anyways, this is Nathan for NRF Productions signing out, and just remember guys and gals, life's a beach and then you drive.